And I recently consulted with someone who was only worried about becoming a citizen, and then to his shock and horror, his I-751 got denied. Let's talk about what happens when you get your I-751 petition to remove the conditions on your residency denied. A lot of people are filing their N-400 applications for citizenship while the I-751 to remove conditions is still pending. And I recently consulted with someone who was only worried about becoming a citizen, and then to his shock and horror, his I-751 got denied. So let's talk about what immediately happens when an I-751 gets denied, or at least what is supposed to happen. So when an I-751 gets denied, USCIS takes the position that your permanent residence is terminated. Now, actually, under the Immigration and Nationality Act, you are still a permanent resident until an immigration judge orders you removed or you voluntarily sign Form I-407 to abandon your residency. Until one of these two things happens, you're technically still a permanent resident with a way to maintain your residency. When an I-751 gets denied, USCIS will actually send you a letter saying like your conditional residence is hereby terminated. And what's supposed to happen next is they are supposed to send your case over to immigration court and generate a notice to appear in immigration court, where you have to now defend yourself in removal proceedings. At this point, you have two options. One, you can ask the judge to review the decision that USCIS made. So for example, if you applied for your I-751 based on being in a continued good faith marriage with your US citizen spouse, and USCIS says that they don't believe you're in a good faith marriage or you haven't met your burden, then you can ask the judge to review that decision, and you could have a whole hearing. You are entitled to more protections. You have a right to an attorney. There will be like a whole mini trial on this issue. Is this a good faith marriage? Alternatively, you can file a new I-751 in a different category with USCIS and then ask the immigration judge to pause the removal proceedings until a final new decision is made by USCIS. The way you can ask the judge to pause the removal proceedings, this changes and it's a matter of policy and BIA precedent. Right now, what I would do is I would ask the judge to administratively close the removal proceedings, which means your removal proceedings will still technically be pending, but there will be no future hearing date until one of the parties, either you or the Department of Homeland Security, submits a motion to recalendar these administratively closed removal proceedings. Another way is you could just request a really long continuance. Some judges have preferences for continuances over administrative closure. I recently had a judge tell me that the proper remedy in this case, given the need for finality, is to terminate the removal proceedings. That was a bit of a surprise, wasn't expecting that. So I immediately prepared a motion to terminate because that's great. It gets my client completely out of removal proceedings and now they only have to deal with USCIS. So just quickly, some of the other categories in which you can file an I-751, there's like three that we've employed over the years. One would be you entered a good faith marriage, but it's now ended through divorce or annulment. So you could always file a new I-751 based on that category. But if USCIS determined that your marriage wasn't in good faith, this might not be a better option because you still have to demonstrate that the marriage is in good faith. But there's two other categories that might be useful for some people. One, you can indicate that you were the victim of domestic violence or extreme cruelty. That's one of the options. So in that situation, you don't actually need to prove that it's a good faith marriage, but you do need to prove that you were the victim of cruelty. I mean, really implied in that is that it was a good faith marriage and then you were kind of abused. The other one though is the whole category is my removal from the United States will result in extreme hardship. So this extreme hardship determination is to the immigrant who would face removal from the United States. So for example, let's say you're from Nigeria and USCIS has determined that your marriage was not in good faith and they now place you into removal proceedings. But you know that if you are removed to Nigeria, you will suffer extreme hardship. Maybe you have some health conditions and you don't have access to that medication or mental health support if you go back to Nigeria. That might be an argument for extreme hardship. So instead of having to reprove that you're in a good faith marriage, you might be able to just refile a new I-751 with USCIS saying that your removal will result in extreme hardship. If your removal proceedings are pending and then USCIS approves your new I-751 based on extreme hardship, you can then show the immigration judge, look, my conditions were properly removed, please terminate the removal proceedings. You might even get the Department of Homeland Security to agree to dismiss the charges of removability. Doesn't really matter if it's terminated or dismissed, it's the same actual impact. And then you'll probably have enough time under your belt as a permanent resident to apply for naturalization if you meet all the other requirements like good moral character. There have actually been a lot of changes to naturalization. I'm going to make a new video on that within the next day or two, so stay tuned. That's the end of today's video, guys. If you're dealing with this issue and your I-751 was denied, or you just had a really hostile I-751 interview, it might be a good time to speak to an immigration lawyer before things escalate to a point where there's no turning back. If you need assistance or you want to consult with an immigration attorney, my name is Puyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney. I handle these cases nationwide, and you can find my information to schedule a consultation in the video description, or you can just go to my website, darianlaw.com, and click the button for schedule a consultation. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time for another video.